right. It is hard to believe it, everybody, but the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference is over. I can't believe it. We just had the final keynote of the event. If you've been going to a lot of them, it's going to feel really weird now because you're not going to know what to do with your life. But we just had the last event, and I almost managed to marathon it. I only missed three things, and I'm going to go back and do a video pass. But right now, for those of you who are considering the video pass or who didn't make it to all the classes today, let me go through day 5, the final day of the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference. And get your Kleenex ready, or I should have warned you about this for those doing it live, but the last day is classically the day where you will cry. And Jack started it off pretty strong this morning, reading a poem, sharing a poem that was the last poem that Malcolm Margolin shared with him. Malcolm Margolin was the editor and I believe the founder of Heyday Publishing Company, and helped Jack out a lot and provided a lot of support for Jack when he was getting his first book published through them. And anyways, he shared that poem. It was Place by W.S. Merwin, and it's a very powerful poem. I highly recommend you looking it up. And it starts like this: on the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree. So you know that if he's going to share a poem, that was the last poem that this mentor of his shared before he died. And the poem starts with, on the last day of the world, I would plant a tree. And it's this poem Place. You know it's going to be an emotionally intense beginning of the day. The challenge, which I believe it's too late to submit for the final raffle and challenge, is the invitation. He's calling it an invitation now instead of a challenge. And he said the invitation is, let yourself be awed and reflect that on the page. So anyways, it was a moving introduction to the day. And then we went from that to something a lot more lighthearted with Chloe Peters. She's called Finchwing on Instagram, but she's an artist and animator, and she did a really cool class from sort of an animator's perspective on how to draw animals, mostly mammals, but not only mammals, all vertebrates, that's for sure. And it was a very interesting class. There were some good quotes. There was a lot of cats. She tried to convince people to like rats, and she helped us look at some basic sort of principles to understand the movement of these animals. The class was officially called Animal Joints and Locomotion. I tried drawing in this pink colored pencil, and just to kind of get a more sketchy effect. This class was intended by her, I think, just to be like you just listen to her talking kind of class. But then she actually, in my opinion, you can sketch along the whole time. And she would put up photos, and then she would show like where these major joints from the animal are and how she would draw them. It was all it wasn't live drawing, at least not any of this part. It was just um, a prepared talk, sort of explaining the anatomy to you. And she doesn't have like an anatomy or biology background, so this is all from experience from drawing. And she has a lot of experience, and she just got back from a safari, I believe, in Zambia, with a bunch of other artists and animators. So she had a lot of photos and reference from that. Hi, Ashley. Yes, I know I'm missing it already. It's always hard at the end. Hi, Susie. Thanks for joining in. And so she did elephants, giraffes, horses, rats, and so that was a really good class, good practice. And then, sort of a very different type of class compared to that last one was the journaling a river class with Alex Boone. He has 2 books about it. I put them in the supply list that I've been sharing, and you can find them on his website. And one of them is called How to Draw a River. So it was a really cool class where he talked a lot about the sort of concept of drawing a river. One of the things he pointed out is that a lot of times in nature journaling, we have this bias where we just focus on the biological and ecological parts of nature. and we don't look at the abiotics. So for example, the physics of how a river moves is something that sometimes gets forgotten, or geology and geography. So really fun class with him, and really interesting to think about the significance of drawing a river. We did a couple exercises. So it was designed to draw along with him, where we tried to draw the movement of water, and he shared some of his techniques. He shared his color mixing techniques as well. He definitely uses colored pencils. That's his main thing. Um, and he talked about stewardship at the end, which I thought was really important. One thing he pointed out is that people who do figure drawing, when they're done drawing the model, they pay the model. So they're paying the model to draw them, right? But nature journalers, we're drawing stuff from nature, but how do we pay nature back? And so he said that it's really important with nature journaling and drawing from nature to have some element of stewardship, so that you're giving back to nature in a way. Then I went to Pencil Miles and Chill. It was the last Pencil Miles and Chill session. There's no recording of those. And it was fun to sort of jump around this time and see a bunch of different breakout rooms. If you're here watching this live, post in the comments what was your favorite part of the conference, as I get ready for my next page here with Michael Boardman. Here was a class that was also sort of different. It was a little bit of an adventure log with Michael Boardman. Very interesting. And he talked about artist residencies. And I thought this was cool because for people who are interested in doing an artist residency, he provided a lot of tips. These are all tips. These are all the places where he's done residencies, starting with several in Maine, and then ending with several in Alaska, including the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, which is famous, most famous because they're always trying to come up with ways to let oil companies and stuff into there. So it's a constant challenge. He got to spend some time there doing a bunch of sketching, and it was fun. It was fun to see his class because he did have elements mixed in for us to sketch along. And so starting with this American golden plover, it was fun to sketch along with him, and throughout he mixed in video and a lot of stuff. So he made a pretty dynamic class. He had some funny things to say, and some stories about bears. And yeah, an interesting, especially if you're interested in doing an artist residency or learning more, really good class. He had a couple interesting things he did with his nature journals. He uses Stillman and Byrne Alpha series, which are the ones that I don't like anymore, but maybe he hasn't gotten the ones with the bad covers yet. He uses the smaller size than this. This is 9x12, but he likes the paper, and I like the paper in that one too. So it's good paper, but very good class. And the last thing we did was draw a gyrfalcon. It's not Gear, it's Gyr. It's some kind of old English word, I believe, or maybe some kind of Nordic word. And the thing that I wanted to point out that was sort of interesting about what he did, and I think this is something that nature journaling can explore more, is on the cover of his sketchbook. So before going on a trip, he does screen printing and makes t-shirts and stuff. He would print sort of like a totem animal almost. And so he printed a gyrfalcon on here, and like the title of what he was going to be doing. But by putting that animal on the cover, he's sort of that's like his target species, or that would be like his dream species, or to reference Christian Cooper's keynote, it's sort of like a unicorn, right? So maybe you're going on a trip and there's a certain species that's either iconic or symbolic for you, or it's like a unicorn for you. You could somehow depict it or paint it or screen print it, in his case, on the front of your nature journal, or do a drawing of it like on the inside cover, as a way of like calling it in, or trying to like give yourself good luck about seeing it. I thought that was kind of an interesting concept. So then we went from his class. Let's see if there were any other. Oh, he also posted a link. Ooh, oh shoot, I should get that link. I shared it on my Instagram, but there's a link to sign a petition to not let them into to destroy the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, because they're planning on this winter bringing in these giant trucks that are like, I forget how heavy, 900,000 pounds, or some massive trucks that drive over the land and like use some kind of explosions or something to do like seismic testing to see if there's oil. And I can't find the link right now. It's going to take me a second to find the link because I don't have it on my desktop, but Sandra knows which one it is. If you can find it, share the link here. I think I have it somewhere on my desktop, but how can I get to it? I think if you go to alaskawild.org, you should be able to find it. But later I'll post the link where you go directly to the petition. And then after his class was this botanical class. It was called Three Steps, or it was called Botanicals Using a Three-Step Approach with Laura Watson. I think she has a big following. I can't remember how big her online following is, but a lot of these people are Insta famous, and she has a bunch of classes, and she is trained at like the London Royal Society of Watercolor Botany Artists, so she knows how to follow all the rules, or at least she had to when she did that program. And she breaks them in her classes, but she explains how she's breaking them. It was one of those classes where I had resistance about following the instructions, especially because I didn't know we had to print something out before the class. But in the end, I'm glad I did it. She goes very fast, especially at the beginning, so be prepared for that. And what else? She had some interesting watercolor mixing stuff, and um, we painted a flower from Canada. She's on the west side of Canada. So that was the class with Laura Watson. You can see my energy level is sort of crashing here because I didn't do like the drawing of her and write down all the quotes. I often do a 2-page spread per class, but already on Michael's class, I just did like 1.5. So I'm sort of running out of steam at this point in the marathon. But at least look, I followed the instructions, and I think I did a little cute ink and watercolor is a technique that she is showing. So if you want to get some botanical illustration, and one thing I should point out is she completed this whole illustration within the class, whereas the botany with this is my opportunity to talk trash about colored pencils, but the botany class with Wendy Hollander on day one, that there was like not even half of a leaf got completed in the class because colored pencils are super slow. So just putting it out there, if you want to do botanical illustration and you want to be able to complete one teeny plant in 1 hour, then this would be a good class for you, a good technique, I think, for you, ink and watercolor. If you want to spend 8 hours doing a single plant or just a part of a plant, then check out Wendy Hollander's technique. Okay, and then the very last class, drum roll, right? The very last class of the conference was a class on monarchs with Rebecca Lowell. And I honestly, I wasn't sure if I was even going to follow along with this one. But then she started talking and I decided I would go with it. And she set it up completely as a follow along class, like where you can do everything with her. So it's like a project, and you show it's not the life cycle, so it's not a complete cycle, but it's a lot of the process of it's part of a monarch's life cycle. Let's put it that way. So, and she talked about the conservation work she does with them, but going from an egg to the first instar to the second instar, blah, 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 multiple instars, they get bigger, they get fatter. We had to start speeding up here just as they started getting more complex. Then she talked about this pupation stage, the inclusion stage, and then finally the final butterfly. So if you like monarch butterflies, you'll definitely like the class. If you want to practice sort of this style of showing a process in your nature journal, this could be done with flowers as well. It's a good class for that. And it's really well organized in a way for you to sort of follow along. You could probably use any materials you want. I used watercolor in the sort of basic kit that I list on my uh, complete supplies list post, which I'll post here in the comments. I think I've got pretty much everything from the entire conference on there, including the books. And most of them have links. Not all of them have links, but at least you can see basically all the supplies mentioned and used in the conference all in one place. And that was it. I decided that I was going to, after her class, I just had this small amount of space here, and I decided that I would just take notes from the final keynote there. One thing I want to point out, you've probably noticed this, but this is a really good tip in the future, is I print out 2 versions of the schedule. I always print out 2 versions of the schedule. One of them, I go through crossing them off. That's very satisfying, right? And then I have a second one that I use, and I cut out the thing from each part of the schedule and just glue it onto my page. You could even do this in a small sketchbook. If you have a small sketchbook like this for whatever reason and you're at like a conference, you could cut out the schedule, pieces of the schedule or whatever, and glue them into here. Or if you go on a trip with your family and you're OCD and you make a printed out itinerary for your trip, you could cut that out and glue it into a journal. So that's one thing that I do, to sort of just have another element of the conference added in. You can also, obviously, you could cut out like the logo and use that. So it's just a scrapbooking technique. And it was a really good talk between Christian Cooper and Amy Tan. Susie was also at that class. I mean, I love the way Wendy Hollander's stuff looks. I love the way those colored pencil illustrations look. I think it's more virtuosic and in some ways also more realistic. To me, I find Wendy Hollander's art, I enjoy looking at it more than what's her name? Than Laura Watson. But I think Laura Watson's approach is a lot easier and faster. That's the main difference in my opinion. Thanks for sharing, Susie. And also, I have wrist problems. When I do colored pencils for a certain amount of time, my wrist just starts to hurt from doing colored pencils. And it seems like every time I try to get into that colored pencil work, like Alex Boone's as well, it just hurts my wrist. So that's my excuse. Okay, so let me check out my notes here from the conversation with Christian Cooper. One thing he said is that if you're interested in birds and pay attention to birds, you're a birder. So if you're one of these people that goes around saying that you're not a birder, that was me for a long time. I said I wasn't a birder. You're just lying to yourself, basically, according to Christian Cooper. And he had a couple things about why birds are amazing, and one of them, and I think this was really cool, I never heard anyone say it this way, is that birds use the same main senses as humans to communicate. Whereas lots of other mammals have no color vision. Lots of other mammals have no color vision. They often don't have like crazy colors on their body. They often use scent a lot to communicate. Birds, however, their main forms of communication are visual and auditory. A lot of mammals and almost no reptiles, for example, make sounds. And birds make all kinds of different sounds, and they come in all kinds of different colors. So that was interesting. They're diurnal as well. Then he described the 7 pleasures of birding. I have my list here. The first one is their beauty. The second one is the joy of being in a natural setting. Birding can be an excuse just to get outside. 3, the joy of scientific discovery. There's, you can notice new things that maybe no one else has noticed before, especially behavior. The joy of collecting. You are basically playing like Pokemon. You have this list of like, oh, I haven't seen this one yet. I haven't seen that one yet. There's the joy of hunting without the bloodshed. So you get to have that sort of experience of like working really hard to find something, thinking about like the climate conditions and the weather and like what is this animal going to do next, and trying to, it's almost like a chess game or something. That's the joy of hunting without the bloodshed. Number 6 is the joy of puzzle solving, trying to figure out like what are the details that differentiate these two different types of sparrows, like trying to figure out what are the marks on those animals that tell them apart. That's the joy of puzzle solving. And then the last is 7, the unicorn effect. The unicorn effect is you hear about these species of birds that are out there in the world, like the harpy eagle or the sword-billed hummingbird or the Hoatzin or something like that. And when you see them, if you hear about them and you have them in your imagination for so long, and then when you see them in real life, it's like seeing a real life unicorn. Those are the 7 pleasures of birding that he mentioned. The conversation with Amy Tan was really cool. They talked about racism, which is really important and often not talked about enough in our community that's not very diverse. They told a bunch of funny stories, and she talked about how understanding birds as individuals was really important for her. She wrote the book, the Backyard Birder, and the Backyard Bird Chronicles. It's in my supply list. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a bunch of books. And he talked about the importance of knowing families, which is something I emphasize with plants, that if you know the families, you can start sort of organizing your learning from there. And they talked about mysteries that we see. And then one last thing that I'll point out is he said he made a point about how, you know, we need to get all different types of people interested in birding, not just retired white people, because the demographics in this country are changing, and we need to get everybody interested in birds if we want there to be birds in the future, and we want people to, you know, make decisions and vote for things that will help birds. Amy Tan mentioned that there's apparently 90 million people in the US identify as birders or are interested in birds. And that's a really powerful thing to think about, because that's commonality, right? We think of how fractured the US is today politically, and the fact that that many people are all sharing a similar interest is really powerful. This sort of segued into how nature journaling can save the world and maybe save the country, which that's even a bigger task in some ways. So that was exciting. John Muir Laws jumped in at that point. And the last thing of the whole conference was he asked them if, you know, these are pretty famous people, Amy Tan and Christian Cooper, if they could give us homework, what would our homework be for us nature journalers? And it's important to have homework at the end of the conference, I must say. Having some plan of what you're going to do to follow up from this conference is really important for the integration part. And Christian, his recommendation was take a bird you're really familiar with, like for him it would be an American robin, and then just study and observe it very deeply. It's a bird that you think is boring. It could be, maybe it's a pigeon even. It's a bird, some type of seagull, a bird that you think is boring, that you usually ignore. Try to just study it really deeply, and maybe using the tool of nature journaling is the obvious choice here. Try to see if you can learn new things about it, observe new things, and find joy in that super common species. So that was his piece of homework. And then Amy Tan's piece of homework for us was to find the story and the drama. So observe bird behavior and try to find the story, try to recognize the individuals, try to see what's going on there, try to find the drama that's going on with the birds, and ask why. So those are the 2 pieces of homework that they gave us. If you're like me, you probably have a lot of pages of homework from other classes or unfilled, unfinished things that you started for one class and never finished. So I have that. You might have that too. If you do have time, while you have this energy after the conference, maybe setting some time to do homework. I'll probably do another live video this coming week talking about that. Otherwise, another option is to dive into my monthly prompts that I created for this month, and I basically forgot about during the whole conference. But you can find it on the Wild Wonder website. everything's stuck together with tape here. So it's not over yet. You can still do prompts. And that's all I'm going to say for now. I'm going to catch up on sleep now that the conference is over. Definitely check out my supply list if you haven't seen it yet. It's just the whole idea. The main idea there is to have all the supplies in one place in case you're confused or in case you're curious. And I will be doing some more this week, going over some of these pages, doing some homework, but I basically filled a whole sketchbook at this year's conference. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. See you next time at the latest Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Bye. I didn't check the messages on Instagram.